I once thought if I was good enough, obedient enough, my parents would finally see me. But I was wrong. I once believed that family was the only place where you didn't have to compete. Turns out, even at home, there are winners and losers. And in my family, I was always the loser. Not because I didn't try, but because from the time I could remember, I'd been cast into a role, the extra. I'm Stella, 26 years old, born and raised in a historic estate on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina, a place where people speak softly, but every word cuts deep. My family is upper class. My father, Charles Whitmore, is the chairman of a long-standing investment firm. My mother, Evelyn, is the kind of woman who rules charity galas with flawless smiles and eyes as sharp as glass. Vivian, for an older sister, Vivian, 4 years ahead of me, and for as long as I've been aware, I knew I wasn't the one they favored. Vivian was their angel. That's how they introduced her to everyone, and sometimes even in private, when it was just the four of us in the living room. On Vivian's 16th birthday, she got a red convertible and a backyard party with live music and fireworks. When I turned 16, Mom handed me her old designer wallet. "A wallet's more practical than a car," she said. I remember it rained that day. I smiled, said thank you, then cried alone in my room that night. Not because of the wallet, but because I knew I would never be the chosen one. I got straight A's, top of my class, earned a full academic scholarship to college. When I told them, Dad didn't even look up from his phone. Mom just said, "You should thank Vivian for inspiring you to push yourself." Vivian didn't like that I outperformed her. Didn't like when I looked better, spoke better, stood out more. Whenever I got attention, she'd borrow my clothes and return them ruined. Invite my friends over, then tell them I wasn't interested. Once, she stole the essay I wrote for a scholarship application and submitted it under her name. When I complained, Mom said, "Vivian's more sensitive than you. You should learn to be more understanding." Dad always shut me down with a dismissive shake of the head. "Stella, you always make things dramatic. Family isn't a place to judge each other." But it never felt like family was a place where I was even heard. The only person in that house who truly saw me was my grandfather, Henry Whitmore. He lived in the cottage behind the main house, a quiet space that smelled like pine and held faded photos of old hunting trips. Every Saturday afternoon, I'd knock gently, and he'd open the door with both arms wide. "There's my brightest girl," he'd say, eyes gleaming behind thick lenses. Only with him did I feel like I mattered. But life doesn't let you keep the people who love you most forever. When he left this world, mine started to fall apart. The day Henry died, it rained in Charleston for 3 straight hours, then stopped abruptly, like someone had pulled the curtain shut. I stood alone by his casket. No music, no flowers, just me and the memory of the one man who ever called me his pride. Vivian stood at the front, dressed in black Valentino, her expression cold, as if the funeral were just another public appearance. She even waved to the press, tears welling up right on cue for the flash. I couldn't cry, not because I wasn't broken, but because the grief had already filled every part of me. A week later, we were summoned to the lawyer's office. The conference room was cold, mahogany gleamed. A chandelier spotlighted the well like the center of a stage. Dad, Mom, and Vivian sat across from me, wearing faces that already looked victorious. Then the lawyer spoke. "Mr. Henry Whitmore bequeaths all controlling shares of Whitmore & Co., as well as his personal estate, including the Whitmore residence, to Stella Whitmore." The room froze. "What?" Mom shrieked, springing from her chair. "This is some kind of joke, right?" Dad gripped the armrest, jaw clenched. "This must be a mistake. There's no way Henry left everything to her." Vivian stared at me like I had just ripped a crown off her head. "He was mentally unstable before he died. Everyone knows that." I looked at the lawyer, he gave a calm nod and retrieved the documents. The will was written 6 months ago, at a time Mr. Whitmore was medically verified to be of sound mind. There's a video to confirm. I didn't feel triumphant, just terrified. Because deep down I knew they weren't going to let this go. Dad turned to me, voice like steel. Do you think you're capable of running a corporation? Who do you think you are? I answered steady and sharp. I'm the one Grandpa trusted, the only one he chose. Mom laughed bitterly. You have no business sense. You'll destroy everything he built. And when that happens, don't come crawling back to us. Vivian dug her nails into her palm, never breaking eye contact. Enjoy it while it lasts, Stella. It won't last long. I said nothing. But I knew they weren't just angry over money. They were furious because for once in their lives I had stepped out of the shadow they'd trapped me in. That night, I went into Grandpa's study, our sacred space where we once discussed markets and strategy, his hand on mine guiding me through every number. But the peace was gone. File drawers flung open, documents scattered. I called downstairs. Who's been in this room? The butler averted his eyes. I believe Mr. Charles needed to review some legal files. A chill sliced down my spine, and I understood. The game had begun. And this time I had no one behind me. But I swore, if they wanted war, I'd show them just how invisible Stella Whitmore had become fire. Just 3 days after the will reading, the house felt like a different planet. Doors were locked, staff went silent. Even Lucy, the housekeeper who raised me, barely spoke anymore. One morning, I walked into my office and found the lock changed. My personal laptop, gone. The investment folders Grandpa and I had curated together, erased. I stormed into the living room. Mom sat casually flipping through a magazine, sipping mint tea. Do you know who went into my office? I asked, trying to stay composed. She didn't even look up. Your father probably needed to review some legal matters. Don't be so emotional, Stella. Emotional? My hands trembled. He left everything to me, so why am I being treated like an intruder? She shut the magazine, eyes sharp as glass. Because no matter what he signed, you'll never belong in this world. You never did. That afternoon, I overheard my father speaking in the library with a man I didn't recognize. We need to nullify the will before the trust activates, Dad hissed. If she gets access to operations, the whole company could crumble. I'm working on it, the man replied. There are ways to disqualify someone legally. I backed away from the door, heart pounding. I needed to act fast. That night, I called Carla, my college friend turned civil attorney in Dallas. After I told her everything, she went silent. Then she said, Stella, if what you're telling me is true, they're building a case to kick you out, record everything, and don't ever be alone with them. But I was already out of time. The next morning, the housekeeper knocked on my door, her voice unfamiliar. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore request your presence in the dining room. When I walked in, they were already seated. My mother was cold, my father tense, like a bomb about to go off. Vivian sat beside them, her eyes mocking. My father spoke first. We've filed a legal complaint, challenging the validity of the will, and given the current tension, we've decided you need to leave the house. I stood frozen. What? You have until noon to pack your things, my mother said quickly, as if afraid of my reaction. After that, the property will be sealed off for the investigation process. This is my house, I snapped. Grandpa left it to me. My father jumped up, yanked the belt from his chair, and slammed it onto the table. You dare raise your voice here? I backed away. I'll sue you. I didn't get to finish the sentence before he lunged. He grabbed my hair and yanked hard. I screamed, struggling. Let go! What the hell are you doing? Shut your mouth, he roared, dragging me out of the chair and down the hallway like a rag doll. Vivian did nothing, she just watched, eyes blank. He dragged me down the stone steps, slamming my body against each one. My shoulder burned, my head spun, blood trickled from my temple. Out in the front yard, he shoved me hard onto the damp brick ground. The impact knocked the air out of me. My suitcase was thrown after me, its lock bursting open, belongings scattered everywhere. You are no longer part of this family, he said, dusting off his hands. If you dare come back, I'll call the police. I knelt in the courtyard, trembling, my head pounding, tears mixing with blood and dirt. In that moment, it wasn't just pain, it was fire. I curled up in the back seat of a suburban bus, my torn suitcase at my feet, dried blood still on my coat sleeve. My whole body ached, but my mind was burning. The physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation of being thrown out by my own parents like garbage. Ashley, the only friend I could trust, was the first person I called after leaving the gate. "Stella," her voice was panicked. "What happened to you?" I could only whisper, "I have nowhere to go." 10 minutes later, Ashley's old Civic pulled up to the curb, the car door flung open before she even hit the brakes. "Oh my God, your face. What the hell happened?" "I'll tell you everything," I said, trying to stay composed. "But first, I need to get something important back." In the mess of the suitcase, beneath an old sweater, I found the only intact item: my grandfather's gold pocket watch. The one he always carried to board meetings, the one he said was only for when time truly matters. I turned it over in my hands, noticing the back felt thicker than usual. Then I remembered, he once taught me how to open a safe by pressing 4 points, just like the tiny marks on the watch's back. I tried it. A soft click sounded. Inside was a black USB stick and a folded note. I opened the note first. It was my grandfather's handwriting, shaky but clear. "Stella, if you found this, things have gone further than I hoped. The USB contains copies of medical records, meeting recordings, and backup accounts. Contact Richard Madsen in Savannah. He'll know what to do. And remember, when the wind changes, the one who adjusts the sails survives." I choked up. My heart clenched. He had known. He had prepared. Ashley stared at me, eyes wide. "Did you just say recordings?" "I don't know what's inside," I whispered. "But if Grandpa prepared it, it's not nothing." We headed straight to the nearest coffee shop. The barista knew Ashley and didn't question my disaster-like appearance. Ashley plugged the USB into her laptop. A folder popped up. "Whitmore Legacy, open only if necessary." I took a deep breath, then clicked. The first video showed my grandfather in his study. He looked directly into the camera. "I, Henry Whitmore, am fully sound of mind while recording this. I leave my estate to my granddaughter, the only one who understands the company's value and business ethics. If anyone tries to undo this, know they are acting against me." I trembled. There were 10 more recordings, with his private doctor, an independent attorney, and, shockingly, one confronting my father. "Charles, if you ask me to transfer control to Vivian one more time, I'll go public with what you did to the Atlantic Investment Fund in 2009. Ashley turned to me, whispering, "Jesus, they're hiding something huge." I nodded, eyes fixed on the screen. The folder also held offshore account info, doctored financial reports, and a whistleblower letter to the SEC that was never released. "Stella, you don't just have evidence, you have a weapon," Ashley said. She gave a faint smile, lips still swollen but eyes burning bright. "And this time, I'm striking first." "Let's file the lawsuit," I said, my voice steady as steel. "Are you sure?" Richard asked. "This isn't just a property dispute, this will be war." I clenched the pocket watch, the symbol that started it all, and lifted my chin. "Then I want war. Then I'll show them they picked the wrong weakling." A few weeks later, the Charleston County Court officially accepted my lawsuit, accusing my parents and Vivian Whitmore of forgery, corporate asset abuse, will violation, and physical assault on the rightful heir. That same day, the media picked it up. Inheritance scandal at Whitmore & Co. shakes Southern financial circles. Stella Whitmore, the girl thrown out, returns with a heavy legal case. I gave no interviews, said nothing. I didn't need to. The evidence would speak for itself. Attorney Benjamin Carter's office, Richard's former colleague and an expert in estate litigation, became my temporary headquarters. There, I met people who were strangers, yet willing to fight for the truth. "I'm not doing this just for you," Benjamin said during our first meeting. "I admired Henry. You deserve the protection he wanted for you. On the first day in court, I entered the courtroom wearing a deep blue suit, once worn by my grandmother, kept like a blessing. All eyes turned to me. Across the room, my mother avoided my gaze. My father didn't. He glared at me with searing contempt. Vivian kept her head down, her hands clenched white. Judge Evelyn Grant was known for her firmness. As the session opened, she declared, "We've received documentation including video footage, handwritten letters, medical records, and financial data. This court will determine who was betrayed and who exploited the legacy." The defense argued my grandfather was mentally incompetent during the drafting of his will, claiming I had manipulated his weakness. Then they presented the forged letter, the same defamatory note they'd once thrown at me during the family meeting. Benjamin stood up and pulled from his briefcase the original letter in my grandfather's handwriting, a medical affirmation from his personal doctor, and video footage of him answering legal and business strategy questions 1 week before his death. The courtroom fell silent as the video played. I, Henry Whitmore, am fully of sound mind, and I choose Stella, not out of sentiment, but for her capability, her integrity, and because she is not one of those who would trample ethics to get what they want. When the video ended, I saw Judge Evelyn frown, but not at me. She turned to the defense. "What do you say about the account statements showing a $190,000 0 cents transfer from the company fund to Vivian's personal account, the day after the plaintiff was expelled from the house?" No one answered. Vivian broke down first. She cried, covered her face, and sobbed. "They made me do it. They said if I didn't agree they'd cut off my treatment funds. I didn't know it would go this far." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Shut your mouth." The judge pounded the gavel. "Order! Mrs. Evelyn, Mr. Charles's courtroom is not your stage for blame shifting." 4 days later, the court ruled. The will of Mr. Henry Whitmore is legally valid. This court orders full restoration of all assets and executive authority of Whitmore & Co. to Mrs. Stella Whitmore. The defendants must return all misappropriated assets and face potential criminal charges for forgery and corporate embezzlement. I stood up, said nothing, just nodded. It wasn't a victory. It was justice. My mother wept. My father stood frozen. Vivian couldn't meet my eyes. I turned and walked out of the courtroom, never looked back. In the hallway, Ashley hugged me tightly. "You did it." I gripped her hand. "I'm not done yet. I still have a legacy to rebuild." 2 weeks after the trial, I returned to the Whitmore estate, alone. No parents, no cold echoes of my mother's heels on marble, no trace of Vivian's expensive perfume in the halls. Just a vast house whose walls had witnessed every fracture of a family that once seemed perfect. I walked slowly up to the second floor, into my grandfather's office. The oak desk was still there, his notebook placed neatly as if he'd just stepped out to make tea. I sat down and opened the small right drawer, the one I knew hid unsent letters. There it was, one written to me, never mailed. Only 3 short lines. "Stella, if you're reading this, you've likely endured deep hurt. But don't let betrayal strip your kindness. True strength lies in keeping a kind heart, even when the world turns cruel." I cried, not from pain anymore, but from finally feeling loved, without having to fight for it. In the days that followed, I began rebuilding Whitmore & Co. Not just the books. I cleansed a system poisoned by those I once called family. I fired the finance team that had covered up the fraud. I invited back my grandfather's former associates, the ones cast aside for being too difficult. I also formed an internal ethics committee, just as he dreamed, to ensure every major decision passed not just profit standards but moral ones. I did what he never got to finish. I founded the Henry Whitmore Scholarship, for brilliant students overlooked because they lacked the right connections or appearance. Each time I approved a scholarship for a Haitian student or an orphan girl from New Jersey, I thought of myself, the daughter once deemed not Vivian enough. I also started therapy. Dr. Maynard, a family trauma specialist, asked me, "Stella, when did you feel you truly existed?" I couldn't answer at first. Not until session 6 did I whisper, when Grandpa called me the only one in the family with honest intelligence. "Good," she smiled. "Then build your life around that, not revenge." She was right. I stopped tracking my parents and Vivian in the news. Didn't care where they lived, what they had left. Whether they regretted it or not, it no longer mattered. I ignored all calls from the media, from old friends wanting to reconnect. If they didn't stand by me when all I had was a torn suitcase and bruises, they didn't deserve to appear when I stood tall again. One weekend evening, I sat in the backyard, beneath the grapevine Grandpa once planted. Ashley brought 2 glasses of red wine. "You did it," she said. "Not just the lawsuit, but survival." I raised my glass, clinking hers. "No," I said, gazing at the starry sky. "I didn't survive, I was reborn." I received a letter from Vivian on a rainy afternoon. No fancy envelope, no neatly curved handwriting like a noblewoman's, just a folded sheet of paper, the handwriting messy and trembling. "Stella, I don't expect your forgiveness. I just hope you know that I remember every moment I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. I remember the look in your eyes when Dad dragged you out of the house like a stranger. I have no excuses, only regret." I finished reading and stayed silent for a long time. No anger, no sting, just a deep, vast quiet. 3 months ago, I would have crumpled that letter without a second thought. But now, after therapy, after nights rereading my grandfather's words, I understood. Hatred only keeps those who hurt us in our hearts longer than they deserve. I called Ashley. "I'm thinking of meeting Vivian," I said. She froze. "Are you sure?" "Not to fix anything between us," I replied, "just to put a period at the end." We met at a small cafe near the docks, where no one knew the name Whitmore. Vivian arrived first, curled up in a gray coat, her face bare, no perfect makeup like before. She no longer looked like the spoiled angel of our parents, but a woman piecing herself back together. I sat down, no hug, no handshake. We looked at each other for a few seconds before Vivian spoke. "I sold the Cartier bracelet. Mom once told me to keep it as part of my dowry. I used the money to repay what I took from the company. The rest, I donated to the scholarship fund you started." I nodded, expressionless, but my heart softened just a beat. "I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness," she continued. "I just wanted to say, you deserve to be the heir. I've known it for a long time. I just refused to admit it." I stayed quiet, staring into my untouched coffee. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting," I said. "I'll never forget how you stood there as Dad pulled me down each step. But I don't want to carry hate anymore. It's exhausting." Vivian bowed her head. A single tear hit the table. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for still seeing me as human." I stood, picked up my bag, then paused. "You've taken the first step. Keep walking. Don't go back." Then I left the cafe, stepping into the light rain. I didn't look back. That night, I returned to the house that now truly belonged to me, not just on paper, but in spirit. I sat at my grandfather's old desk, opened the drawer and pulled out the gold pocket watch. Placing it in my hand, I whispered, "I did it, Grandpa." Not because I won, but because I didn't lose myself. Stella's story is a powerful reminder that family isn't always safe, and the truth doesn't need anyone's approval to matter. When betrayed by those she loved most, she didn't choose revenge fueled by hate, but stood strong with wisdom and dignity. In a world where loyalty is often sold for power, Stella shows us the most valuable legacy isn't wealth, but the courage to remain true in a storm of lies. What do you think about Stella's choice? Should she have forgiven her family completely? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more deep, moving stories about family and life's hidden battles.